Alright, so we are T-minus 5 days until a big weekend trip. So, this is the time that things like to break. It's like 5 times more likely that parts break when you're about to go on a big trip, right? So, I've been poking about and looking around and seeing what's wrong and what's not right. I found out my shaft seal over here blew out and was just hanging on for dear life on the end of the pitman arm. So I'm glad I caught that. I shoved that all back in there. I found out the clip wasn't sitting in there properly. So yeah, make sure that's in there good. Second off, what else? The track bar was coming loose, so we tightened that up. So now there's no more popping when you turn. And I started looking to the right. And well, what's that over there? Let's take a look. Oh my god. So apparently one of my U-joint caps decided it was going to just set sail and fuck off somewhere else. And if you notice, the ear is all out around now, so I can't even put a new cap in if I wanted to. Now, apparently this is more common on for hardcore wheelers. These bigger tires put so much stress on the axle shafts that they actually start to stretch. And what happens is the caps will start spinning or, just falling right out. I don't see any wear marks anywhere. I mean, there's not a lot of clearance here. So for that cap to physically come out, I don't know how that happened without, really busting something up. But yeah, some people do tack welds on the caps and the ears to keep them from spinning and falling out, because these only use half clips. And some people try and machine out for full clips. So yeah, I'm gonna go pick up an axle shaft later today, but first let's take this out. So I'm sure there's plenty of videos on YouTube about how to do this really in depth, so I'm just going to go over this real quick. First, we're going to jack up this side of the axle, put a jack stand under it, and then we're going to take the tire off. I've got a jack stand sitting on each side of the lower control arm. Next, you're going to have to take the caliper off. That is 2 7mm hex bolts, and they look like this, so it's just a hex head. So now we can take our rotor off, and this one is not frozen. If it is frozen, you'll have to hit on the face of this with a hammer, and it might break it free. Next up on the list is going to be getting the hub free. Now this is arguably the toughest part of the job by far. So we have 3 bolts. They are 12-point half-inch. If you have not seen a 12-point before, it looks like this. So there's lots and lots of points. It's not like a normal 6-point. It's actually got 12 points. But you're in luck because most sockets are 12-point anyway, if you've ever looked. So you're going to get yourself a breaker bar. It's nice and big. You got to get a pipe that's nice and big and slip it on there and, crank on it. Give it a nice hard push, and that should break it free. So now we're going to take this off. We take this little this cotter pin out. You just straighten out the ears here and then pull it out the top. This is just some flexible metal. I might need better pliers to get a good grip on that. But we're going to pull that out, and then we'll have this little protective collar. Take the collar off, and then we'll get to the nut behind that. We got our 36mm nut. It's a very big socket. So now we take our impact and we pry. Yeah, not bad. What you don't want to do is hit on this, because this is only connected to this by a bearing. So you're really just beating up the bearings doing that. For this, what I did is you put the bolt through and you put the socket over top to protect the head. You beat that side, you go over the other side, you do the same thing and beat that. And on the top, I couldn't get the hammer in there. So I took my cheater pipe, and what I did instead is I put the pipe here and I actually pried it. And that actually got the top one to break free. Now, if this is really stuck in really good and just hitting it doesn't help, you can use the leverage of your vehicle. And you do it on this side, I believe. You got your bolt here, and you got your socket, and you try to find a little extension or something that you could put between the bolt and this arm right here. And what you do, you start your engine, and you turn your wheel to the right. And what that's going to do, your steering is going to suck this knuckle this way, and it's actually going to put pressure between this point and the bolt will physically force the hub out. So that is the way you can do it if you really can't get it to break free. Just make sure no one's in the area, because if that slips or something and goes flying, it might damage people or things. So after all that, this is what you're working for. You got yourself a free hub and an axle shaft. Okay. So now we can really see the damages a lot better. You can see it's very oval. So what it was doing every time you're in four-wheel drive, it's knocking like this every time you go forward, and it's knocking like that every time you go backwards. And it just wobbles the crap out of the ears. So you can actually see where it's split over here too. You can actually see that there's cracks. Like it's actually open. So it actually warped this a little bit. Same on this side. That one was starting to wiggle forward a little. And you can see right here, look, this is the half clip that's supposed to hold it in. And it's just coming free. A lot of hardcore wheelers seem to have these issues. You're just putting so much torque on these things, it physically bends the ears. So this is where chromoly shafts would be helpful, because they can take a lot more force before twisting. Supposedly these caps will actually spin under enough force that it just forces them to spin a little bit. Now some people have tried putting tack welds on to tack the cap to the ear, and that doesn't seem to work for really heavy duty stuff, because like people actually say that they hear the tack welds breaking as they're driving. So that doesn't seem like it's really helping them out. Now if we take a look at what's holding these caps in, it's only 3/4 clips. Alright, they're not full circle. So you can see where that one stops right there. And something I noticed is if you come over here, you notice this clip's already fallen out. And this one over here, it's starting to edge up. So we're going to have to do something about that. And I think that is going to be our issue, is that those little those clips just aren't enough to hold them together. So I got a new shaft, because this one, the ears are they're trashed. So I picked this up from a friend, and we're going to do some work. So I'm going to replace the U-joint in this, even though it doesn't seem terrible, but I have an idea for making sure that the new U-joint doesn't ever fall out. And that is with the help of some full circle clips. So these right here are external ring clips. The size I have is 1 1/8, but the best size you could get would be a 1 3/16. It's just a bit of an uncommon size to try and find. This is what the original clips look like, if you can see them or not. It's just a 3/4 clip, so the problem is under enough torque these things can wiggle out. These, there's no chance in hell these are going to wiggle out. And since these are 1 1/8, they're going to be sitting on the caps pretty tight. So what we're going to do is, when we install the caps, I'm going to put these clips in, and then we'll pop them over. But we will have to modify the shaft a little bit. So first I'm going to beat those clips out, take that old joint out, and I'll show you. So the first thing we got to do is take these old freaking clips out, and they're a pain in the ass. But you're going to want to get yourself some kind of punch that's real thin, so you can squeeze in here and pop these clips out. Now this is the last one left. You can see it starting to bulge out over here. But you just take your punch and you put it in at the corner, and you start whacking at it and hope you get it free. And if it's really not budging, put the thing on the ground and beat the cap real hard a couple of times, and that might help free it up. So once you finally get some movement and it starts sticking out, you just give it a little twist, and your clip's out. So no more of those stupid little half moon bullshits. Alright, so after lots of beating and cursing, you should be able to get that U-joint out. Now, if this hasn't been serviced in a while, you're going to have to get a little angry at it. Don't be afraid to really smack the ever-loving crap out of this thing to get it out. So, you're going to want yourself a big old sledge. Lots of angry things. You're going to want, for these ones, I use a 1 3/16 inch socket to put the yoke on. So that way the U-joint will actually sit inside of that, because that's what you want. The U-joint has to fit into it. And then you also need a beady one to push through. And this, ideally, you want it to be able to fit over the U-joint, but still in the actual ear. So this right here is a 19mm, and this is an impact socket, so it's not going to explode in your face when you're wailing on it. So, you take your sledge and you just keep beating the motherfucker, and eventually she'll move, but you gotta mean it. You can't just You gotta really go for it. So once the U-joint's out, we can take a look at what we're gonna have to modify. If you take a look at how this U-joint, or how this yoke ear is, you'll notice there's a raised edge on the left side. Now that is our issue. Now on stock, the reason why that's there is so that the clip can't spin all the way around and it stops it from spinning. But if we're going to use a full circle clip, that's going to get in the way and we won't be able to install it. So we'll have to shave that down enough to be able to fit the clip in there. From what I understand, this doesn't really weaken it enough to be an issue. So we just got to figure out a way to grind enough out of there and make it nice and flat so that our full circle clip fits when we put our caps in. Okay, so I've been working on grinding this down, and I think I'm getting somewhere. So I took the lip off, as you can see, and if you take the clip and put it over, you actually got enough room that if the cap is through, you should be able to still put the clip around. So I'm going to hammer one of the old caps in there and make sure that this all works. And if it's good, I'll continue that up to the other side and I'll show you how I did it. Okay, so I put the old cap in and look at that. It actually fits, even at the bottom too. That's why we had to clearance it so much, because you got to be able to get the thing around and up in there. So yeah, there you go. So that test fit is good, so this side checks out. So I had to take out a decent amount of material. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but I found out the best way to do this is actually with a hacksaw. This hacksaw was just cutting right through. I couldn't believe it. The metal felt like it was pretty soft. I couldn't even quite do that with my Sawzall. But basically you're just going to start cutting down this whole edge and going to town. Alright, so this is why it's good to test fit before we put this all together. You notice down here, I don't know how well I can get it to show up on camera, but there's still a little tiny ridge. So we just need to grind that down just a little bit more so that clip will fully get all the way in there. Alright. Now we got some clearance. That should do nicely. Alright, now we only got 2 more of these motherfuckers to do. Ugh. Alright, so now the fun part of putting the U-joint in. So, make sure that your clips are on before you put everything in there. So we're going to put the U-joint in, and then we put our caps on one at a time. Make sure that none of your needle bearings are out of place. Make sure they're all in there. Make sure you got some grease. When picking what U-joint you want to buy, I've learned my mistake, and now I'm never going to make it again. Always, always, always get U-joints that you can grease. Make sure they got a grease fitting somewhere on them. Don't get the ones that say super strength, you know, sealed for life, bullshit like that. It's the same exact seals. They might use slightly better grease, but mud's still going to get in the U-joints and still going to fuck them up, and then you're going to be upset when you can't get it all out and grease it. So please, get some that you can grease. But this is a Moog Super Strength. It's a 377. It's the super strength, but it's greasable, so it comes with a grease fitting that fits in one of the caps. So anyway, very, very carefully we're going to put the cap in and make sure the U-joints are in and all that shit and squeeze them all together. Okay, now we can put our first ring clip on. Make sure you keep your fingers away from the open end, because if that thing snaps shut, it will bite you. Pop it over the seal. Just wants to distort though. This is where having the right size would help a lot. The 1 3/16 should fit much better. Not as tight as this. Okay. I think it's finally in there. Alright, so there we have it. Joints all together. And it looks lovely. Cool. So the last thing was to install a little grease fitting, and that uses one of those stupid little needle things. And I don't have a good needle fitting, so let's just hope there's enough grease in there as is. But all the clips are in there, and it's all good and beautiful and wonderful. So I think this shaft is ready to get installed. The sealing surface down here looks beautiful. None of the splines are damaged, and everything is just nice and ready to go. So I put just the littlest amount of grease on there, on the sealing surface, just so that it slides in smooth. So we're going to take our shaft and put it in. If you go through, you know, dirt and mud and all that stuff, you're going to have tons of stuff in your axle tubes. So either try to clean it out, or just make sure that the axle shaft isn't sliding on the tube the whole time. Pick it up so it doesn't grab all that dirt. So we'll put it in, and we'll start putting everything back together. Once you feel that you're inside the seal, and you feel like you hit a stop about here, what you want to do is twist the axle shaft. So you want to twist it until it engages, and then it should lock in all the way with those splines. The way that you know is if your tires are up in the air, you should be able to spin this, or if not, you should feel a lot of force, but it should make things move. Alright, so if you want to get this whole assembly apart later in life, we're going to put some anti-seize all up in this John. I'm going to put a little bit on the outside of the hub so that it doesn't stick to the knuckle as much, and I'm also going to put some to the tip of the threads so that it comes out of the hub later in life. The hub bolts get 75 foot-pounds of torque, so that's the first thing. Don't forget your brake shield if you want to put that on. Next, your hub nut that holds the axle shaft in gets 175 foot-pounds. Don't forget to put you know, your cotter pin and all that bullshit back on there. Next, your brake pads. Don't forget to put these little screw thingies back down so that they let the pads slide on them. Put a little anti-seize on there to maybe help them out. And then tighten up these 7mm hex bolts on this caliper slide. And tighten them up. I forget what they get. They're like 45 foot-pounds or something. Nothing crazy. And yeah, she should be good. Okay, power's on. All the lug nuts have been torqued down. There you have it. That's how you fix up an axle shaft when the the U-joints decide they're going to pop out. So hopefully, hopefully our little modification makes our little system last. We'll see if those ring clips are actually worth their salt or not. So, if anything changes, you know, I'll update the video and let you guys know. But hopefully that'll fix our problem. And also, hopefully, I don't have to take this side out and do the same thing, because that was a little obnoxious. So, there you go. That's how to modify some Dana 30 axle shafts to support some full ring clips and hopefully be a little stronger, support some bigger tires. Sweet. Alright.